All right, what's up, everyone? Coach Braydon here with Look Like You Lift, and welcome to the Look Like You Lift 15 podcast, where you're going to learn how to look like you lift in 15 minutes. In today's episode, I have a different kind of guest than who we usually have on. I've got Frank Rich, who is a pornography addiction specialist. Is that right?
That'll work.
That'll work. But I think it's imperative that we talk about this because we talk a lot about, fitness and nutrition, but we don't really talk about the fitness for our spirituality and our internal health. And so that's why I wanted to bring Frank on here. So Frank, why don't you give us a little bit of backstory of who you are and what you do, man?
Absolutely, brother. And I appreciate the invite here today. Really looking forward to this conversation and hopefully serving your men and your audience. But yeah, porn addiction coach, recovery specialist. I struggle with, describing myself as an expert because I don't really feel that I have the answers to anything. I'm somebody that's sharing my own journey and really that's kind of what's led me to where I am today. So yeah, to keep this short and concise, I much like most men, I was introduced to porn at a very young age. It was something that I struggled with for over 20 years as a really struggling I guess addiction, and that word addiction is kind of one that I try not to use too much. It's when you kind of get into like the clinical side of things, but whatever. But besides the point, like most men, I had an issue with pornography. It probably had its grips much deeper wrapped around me than many men. Through just the sheer grace of God, I was introduced to some really incredible men in 2017, 2018 that just kind of turned my life around. I gave my life to Christ on October 22nd of 2018, and that kind of set me on this trajectory that I've been on here for these last few years. I came face to face with my own struggles and addiction on February 14th of 2019, and that's really been the day that's kind of turned my life around. Just a few months after that, I launched a podcast, just kind of putting my own story. So following, breaking free from porn, literally the world around me just started to change. How I saw the world, how I showed up in the world. I have a background in bodybuilding, entrepreneurship, business. I've been running businesses since 2013. Been in the health and fitness space, for about another 5-6 years before that. But getting on the other side of this struggle, getting on the other side of this porn addiction really opened my eyes up to I guess what you could say is a much deeper calling for my life. And, I started a podcast myself in July of 2019 called The Superhuman Life. That led me to, starting my coaching business now, which is, we're about 11 months into Rebuilt Recovery. And it's really been kind of my mission now to help men break free from porn through the power of faith and fitness. So yeah, specialist, expert, coach, whatever it is. I'm just a guy that's kind of sharing what's worked for me. I love having deep conversation with people on the podcast. And I love being a coach. Like I said, I've been very fortunate to have mentors and coaches in my life. So if I could pass on anything to others, maybe that's what I'm here to do.
Yeah, I love that, man. That's awesome. So I guess let's get right into it. So with pornography, pornography is so normal nowadays. It's like you're weird if you don't look at it, right? So for our audience, like what are the dangers that come with it? Like what are the problems that come with, viewing pornography?
Yeah, such a great question, and we could make that in of itself a 2-hour podcast. I'll try to keep everything short and concise. When I talk about the dangers, I've shot a lot of content and I put a lot of info on the drug of porn. And when I speak about it in terms of it being a very harmful, dangerous drug, I want to preface that with I'm talking about the internet streaming pornography that really is something that we really only had to deal with last 5 to 7 years. Myself, I'm 37. My introduction to porn was not on YouTube or was not on Pornhub. It was not on the internet. It was a magazine. So, going back there, we could look at it from a moral standpoint. Is it right? Is it wrong? Whatever the case, it was a whole different animal. When we talk about the drug of pornography, and we're discussing this kind of infinite supply. So I heard a stat. I had Lila Mickelwaite, who's the founder of Trafficking Hub. Her organization has kind of been at the forefront of really trying to get Pornhub taken down. And she shared the stat with me that at one point early last year, before they were forced to take down 10 million videos, there was over 160 hours of content or 160 years worth of content on Pornhub. basically what this means is if you sat down and watched it and you were just going to watch it consecutively, take you over 160 years to consume it all. Now that's one thing, is just the sheer mass amount of what's available on the internet. The second thing that makes it so dangerous is in the neuroscience world. So clinically, neuroscience is the study of the brain and the nervous system. So brain, spinal cord, and the eyes. In the neuroscience world, internet streaming pornography is what's defined as a super normal stimulus. So realize that when you look at it, it's not just you're looking at it with your eyes, it goes through your eyes, and then immediately there's a response in your brain. So this super normal stimulus, there's nothing in the outside world that your brain responds to in the same fashion that it does with internet streaming pornography. Nothing in the natural world. You have drugs, you have cocaine, heroin, these type of things require that same level of response. So what ends up happening is literally from the first second exposure to it, you now reset your baseline of your brain's response stimulus. And this is where it gets really dangerous, because you may start looking at just kind of simple, innocent pornography, but over time, because you're changing your baseline, you're changing that stimulus response as you get deeper and deeper and deeper into consuming it. And most men will agree with this, that the porn that you're watching today is not the same porn that perhaps you were turned on to a year ago, even 6 months. It's got this escalation effect, because in order for your brain to get that same response, and that's what we need to realize, is when we're going to porn, we're not going for the sexual desire. That's what we think we're getting. That's a false belief. We're going there because our brain is needing a hit. It needs the hit of the dopamine that only more extreme hardcore pornography is going to give us. So I think, to answer your question in the simplest terms, it literally changes the reward center in your brain, needing more and more pornography to give you the same level of response.
That's amazing. And so you said something that's kind of crazy to me. You're not going there because of the sexual desire. You're going there because it's like it's a craving, almost like someone who's addicted to alcohol. They crave that because they're used to that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So would you say, I mean, nowadays we have some like really weird, like fantasies and fetishes. Like we've seen some weird stuff nowadays. Would you say that's probably why? Is because like people are just still trying to chase that high?
Yeah, I definitely think it's a part of it. I was having a conversation with a client of mine earlier this morning, and he's seeing a therapist in addition to the work that he's doing with me, just kind of trying to work through some of his his childhood trauma. And one thing for him is he always had this fear of his own kind of sexual appetite. Everybody's got their what turns them on. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, so to speak. So it's hard to say, like, just because you're into something that it's due to porn, because we all have kind of, like I said, our own kind of sexual desires. But I have to feel, and I don't have any real kind of supporting evidence behind this, that there is something kind of driving what we're seeing today. It's funny because I see you have a picture of Jordan Peterson behind you. I mean, he's one of the most influential people in my life, and he was having a conversation with on the topic of transgenderism. And in there, the fastest rising demographic in transgender-ish, or whatever the term is young females. And here's how he brought it back to pornography, as pornography being a fuel behind what we're seeing in the transgender world, because of how it's shaping young boys, how it's shaping young girls' view of sexuality. The average age of exposure is somewhere between 10, 11 years old. The brain's not developed. They don't understand sex, but they're getting exposed to what they think is sex. So it's literally shaping their view of sexuality. Now, what is this doing to young boys? I've shared this story quite a bit. I heard a talk by Clay, who's the founder of Fight the New Drug. He shares a story of a young boy, 11, 12 years old. He wanted to have his first date at home. So the parents allowed like his girlfriend to come over. They said, you guys can sit in the car as like your first date. That way we can kind of monitor what's going on. So they left the kids in the car. Parents went inside for about an hour. They come back out, and they see, I think his name was Tommy or Johnny. They see his hands wrapped around the girl's throat. They start knocking on the window, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? They pull him out of the car. They're like, Tommy, what are you doing? He's like, isn't that what they like? Isn't that what they want? because he had been raised and brought up on this abuse culture that we're seeing in pornography, where it's just it's so hardcore. So that's the boys. Now the girls are getting exposed to the same thing. They're like, oh my God, if I'm going to get a man to love me, if I'm going to get a guy to like me, he's got to abuse me. He's got to choke me, strangle me, spit in my mouth. Like these type of things. Like, I know it seems hardcore and extreme, and I'm purposely saying these things because this is what's actually out there. So the young girls are getting exposed to, like, if I'm ever going to find a man to love me, this is what needs to happen. Wouldn't it just be wiser for me to just turn myself into a man? So I know I kind of tried to bring something really around here, and I even forgot where I originally started here. Yeah, the fetishes thing. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think there's got to be something kind of fueling that.
Wow, that's crazy. Well, let's go ahead and get into it, man. So what are some of the steps that we can take? You know, we've identified how dangerous it can be, and how it can not only affect your brain, but it can also affect your relationships with your family and your friends, but also how you see women and perceive women. What are some of the steps that we can start taking to start overcoming this?
Yeah, I think the first one, and this is with anything that you're trying to change, is you got to admit that there's a problem. You know, like just hearing the conversation, like you're nodding most men are probably nodding their head at some point in this conversation. That's fine. You're agreeing what we're saying, but you got to kind of make that internal commitment. Like, yeah, this actually is a problem that I need to begin. So the first step is, I think, just an acknowledgement that there is an issue that needs to be worked through and resolved. Secondly, I would probably say, get some accountability, get somebody in your corner. This is not a fight. This is not a battle you need to go about doing on your own. There's, you know, reach out to a coach, a therapist, a counselor, pastor, a close friend, a mentor. I wouldn't advise you recruit your wife or your spouse or your partner as your accountability. That's not their job. That's not their role. It's going to cause for a very, tension within the relationship. But admit that there's a problem, voice it out to somebody else. Like, just get it off of your chest. You know, one thing that changed my life, I talked about that day, February 14th, that kind of turned it all around. It literally started with a conversation. Just somebody else sharing their issues with me kind of gave me the confidence that I could kind of talk about this. So I think that there's something really powerful when you kind of voice out that you're dealing with something. So admit that there's a problem, recruit some accountability. Thirdly, I would say really do like an audit on your life. You know, we could talk about all the side effects. We could talk about all the dangers of it. That's kind of coming at it from a higher level view. Like, actually audit your life. How has porn really impacted you? Has it impacted your ability to find a partner, find a relationship? Yeah, we could probably say it's you objectified women, but actually get to the root cause of it. Has it impacted your ability to maybe generate revenue or start the business or be productive at your job? You know, because this is something we talk a lot about, how it kind of impacts like this frontal part of your brain. It prevents you from kind of getting to deep states of flow. So has there been an impact, you know, in your finances? Has it impacted your health because you're staying up watching porn 6 hours a night? So you're not sleeping well, so you're not getting to the gym. But really start by doing like an audit on your life. Where has it really had a negative impact? Then you could build a plan to improve your life, because it's not just something like, I'm deciding today I'm going to stop looking at porn and then the problem goes away. No, it requires work. It requires putting a plan together for your life. But I would say, admit to yourself there's a problem, recruit some accountability, and then really do a full-on audit of where the porn has really negative impacted you. And then you're kind of have a starting point where you can begin to build and rewire some new habits for yourself.
That's awesome. So now that we have we've identified the cause, we've identified how it's affected our lives, and we have friends or a mentor or a coach to kind of help us along the way. How do you feel about like site blockers or those kind of thing, like ways of making the pornography harder to access? Does that actually help, or what are your thoughts on that?
It depends. You know, it's an individualized thing. I'm not against it completely. I have a partnership with one of the largest companies out there, Covenant Eyes. Most men may be familiar with this. They take these screenshots and it sends it to your accountability partner. So I think it's okay. It can be used as a tool. Do I think that just because you put the site blocker up there, that's going to eliminate your problem if you don't do the deeper work on yourself? Chances are no, because how easy is it just to remove the blocker? You know, I was having a call with a client earlier this week. He's a tech guy. He's an engineer. He's like, dude, I just went behind the firewall or whatever it is. I'm not really computer savvy, but he knew it was there, but he knew how to take it down. So if you really want the porn, you're going to work around it. So it can be a tool, it can be a tool in your program, in your approach. Is it the most effective? Not in my opinion, because I think the issue is deeper rooted in ourselves. And if we don't do the work to change who we are, then it doesn't matter what's trying to block it. Because like I said, if you really want it, you're going to figure out a way to get it.
Yeah, I love that. So so this process of breaking the addiction, it's probably not a clean cut thing, right? It's probably not, you're going to probably mess up a couple times or a lot of times. Like, how do you address that? Like when you do screw up or you do relapse, how do you address that?
Yeah. Once again, an individualized thing, but I think for me, what's helped has been, my faith. Like as a Christian, as a believer, I mean, we come into this with the belief that like we're living in a fallen world. Like humans are like we're sinful by nature. So we're not perfect. So there's going to be, there's going to be misslides and there's going to be, there's going to be course corrections that need to be made. So I think understanding number one, none of us are perfect. There's going to be those errors. Secondly, is just allowing yourself some grace. Like if you're making continual progress, if you're constantly working towards bettering yourself, then live in that perspective. Like, yeah, it may now if you're just, consciously just acting out because you're like, it's okay because I have grace, and yet what you're doing, then that's a deeper issue. You probably need to go back deeper at the beginning and kind of get the why of what you're trying of why you're trying to do this. But I think understanding that, yeah, this is a process. For me, I don't say I'm a recovered porn addict. I'm recovering. I'll be in recovery for the rest of my life. It's something that I need to consciously be aware about every single day. I could easily fall back into the same pattern of behavior that I was in for 20 years. So I think it starts with perspective, knowing I'm constantly working towards becoming a better version of myself. And secondly, if I do slip or somebody does slip, allowing yourself to have some grace, pick your stuff back up, get back on track, and continue to move forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. Frank, what are some good resources that you can guide us to help us get more information, whether it be your own information, your own coaching, books? Like, what would you say are some good resources that we can look more into?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm gonna direct people to my own stuff. So,
Yeah, please.
I mean, I have a YouTube channel. I'd say that's probably the most active place that we are right now with content. So we're doing daily videos there. You can find that at Rebuild Your Life. I also have a free book called The 7-Step Guide to Living Life Without Porn, where walk you through the process to create the life to live after pornography. Because ultimately, I believe that's my philosophy, is like you have to become the person that's no longer addicted to porn. So we kind of walk you through the process of how to build your life without pornography. So check out the YouTube, Rebuild Your Life. Download the free book. It's at the7stepguide.com. The podcast is great. We don't always go down the topic of pornography. It's more of a, personal growth, self-development for men, but that's a Superhuman Life. But there's some other great books out there. Gary Wilson's Your Brain on Porn is an incredible book. I mean, Gary Wilson, he just passed away a few months ago, was a pioneer kind of in this space. I mean, he was one of the first guys really talking about this, years back. So I'd say check out Your Brain on Porn. There's another really good book for any Christians or believers out there called Surfing for God by Michael John Cusack. Our coach and mentor, Vince, had him on back in 2018. And that podcast was actually the catalyst to change my life. But yeah, check out the YouTube channel, Rebuild Your Life, download the book. And then those two books are probably a great place to get started.
That's awesome. Well, Frank, I want to thank you so much for coming onto our podcast and enlightening us and helping us recover and get on the right track to becoming better men. Any closing remarks? I guess, so are those going to be the best ways for people to get in contact you if they want more information about you? Or
yeah, the YouTube will they'll give you the links to download the book, or you can find me on Instagram. I'd say that's probably the second most active place. It's at the Superhuman Frank on Instagram. So send me a DM. That's kind of where we go start the conversations for our coaching is through Instagram. But yeah, best places. Closing remarks, man. I think just understand that it's not an innocent thing. It's not okay. It's not, you kind of use the term like it's the norm, like it's the normal thing. And I don't know. I mean, I know you and I know what you're about. So I would imagine that the people following you aren't really too interested with being just normal. So, reframe kind of how you're looking at this thing. If I did anything today, maybe I educated you a little bit on the dangers of it. But get in front of it, because it can fully hijack your life. And I've seen some really dark places that men have ended up in.
Yeah, I've heard some horror stories myself. I've been there myself. So I can 100% attest to Frank that if you can break this, the sooner the better. Even if you keep messing up, like the fact that you're being diligent about getting through this is a really good sign. So Frank, thank you again so much. We'll have all of your information in the description, so you guys can go reach out to him, and like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you in the next episode.